Well, welcome, good morning, and thank you for joining us, everybody. My name is Dwayne Henderson. I'm a member of Cree Lighting's Training and Education team and host of our e-learning series. For those watching live, happy Monday. Quickly about the session, they are roughly 15 minutes in duration. At the end of the session, the presenters will make themselves available for a Q&A. Although the participants are muted, we do encourage you guys to use the chat and Q&A box to ask questions throughout the presentation. As you know, Monday is design-related content, and today we'll be focusing on lighting for healthcare. To lead us through this topic, I'd like to welcome back Jim Blair from our applications department, and joined today by Jeff Hungarter from our product marketing team. Good morning, boys.
Morning, Dwayne.
Good morning.
Hey, real quick before we get started, let's learn a little bit about your roles in the business. Jim, you want to go first, then we'll move over to Jeff?
Absolutely. Thanks, Dwayne. I lead the application engineering group with Frank Tempesta, and I've been with the group for 12 years. Morning, everybody. Jeff?
Perfect.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I manage the commercial indoor product management team. So lamps, downlights, Troffers, linear. That's our team's role, is developing the roadmap and launching new products.
Perfect. All right, great. So Jim, you're going to kick things off.
Yep. Thank you again, Dwayne. We should start with an understanding of what the recommended practices are. And they are a consensus-formed lighting recommendation from a knowledgeable and diverse group of lighting stakeholders that help guide the lighting design and product selection process. Let's take our study of the recommended practices indoors again as we cover the RP 2916, lighting for hospitals and healthcare facilities. There are many areas in a healthcare facility that we could cover. We will have multiple sessions to cover more of these, but today we're going to focus on common areas, examination rooms, rehab and treatment spaces, and finally nurses' stations. Future e-learning sessions will have RP 2816, and that's lighting for seniors. So if we look at common areas, they're used by caregivers and visitors. These would include lobbies, corridors, and some cafeterias. You never get a second chance to make that first impression, so we should consider the mindset and needs of the people that enter these spaces. Sometimes a larger hospital can be intimidating, overwhelming, or unsettling. Most of us have been there and have felt this way. These spaces serve to welcome, guide, and nurture the visitor and caregiver. The lobby area is an important opportunity for the facility to immediately embrace the visitor or patient to show they care about that experience in most every way. I should mention that visitors will likely become caregivers when the patient is discharged, so providing them with that relaxing and comfortable environment keeps them around for strategizing, training, and instructing. This can also be a space where families gather and shape their plan of caregiving. Lighting guides us, so uniformity and highlighting these destination areas or signage points can really help provide subtle guidance. Most of the visitors that are in these facilities are unfamiliar with them. The size of the building and layout can intimidate an already stressed visitor or patient seeking treatment or support, like I previously mentioned. It's not just what the fixture is that we select here, but how we deploy them. Orienting the fixture to minimize visual discomfort, or select one that has a larger emitting surface to prevent harshness to patients when looking up at them. There are techniques also in indirect lighting from walls to highlight the ceiling and provide better visual comfort. One of the other components of traversal is signage. This means any vertical values or lighting that highlights waypoints should be used as well. As we make our way through this space, we get to the examination room. We could break this room down into 3 key areas: the examination area, a sink for hand washing, and a countertop for supplies or the laptop. What happens in the space is critical to how we approach our lighting design. Evaluations, testing, diagnostic activity, as well as important instruction sessions. This means that high color rendering, 80 CRI minimum, per the RP29 is critically important. Most physicians bring in a laptop cart, and we need a low glare solution to meet those needs. They may also want to raise the light level during their examination to look at evenness of skin tones or inspecting wounds or ailments. It's very important that the color accuracy of the product here is good. Some exam rooms will offer minor treatment as well, which will most likely have in the space a medical task light. These lighting tools, when they're properly layered within the exam room, will help both the patient and the physician. The patient can feel less intimidated by softer and lower light pre and post examination. We also consider visual comfort, as the patient will be occasionally looking up or laying back at a 45-degree angle or possibly flat, and glare from that fixture will be most unwelcome. Rehabilitation areas are another area, often open wide spaces where higher light levels are necessary for a wider variety of activity. The goal here really is to increase the strength, flexibility, mobility, and general fitness of the patient. It's important the light not detract from the focus on these tasks. So shadowing or poor uniformity in these spaces will not help patients with limited mobility, visibility, or balance. Rehabilitation pools are here also, which often introduce unwanted veiling reflectances into the space. Side illumination from outdoor spaces can also promote healing, so photo controls here would be a good option. Treatment spaces are unique. Often the patient will spend hours in the treatment chairs. This is where we hand the control to the patient completely. Lack of visual comfort in this room will be very irritating over time, so color accents and dimming controls, as well as color tuning, are advised. This enables the patient to maximize their own comfort during the treatment process. In addition, natural light or views of exterior sunlight can provide some comfort as well. Televisions are used with other positive distractions, and our lighting really needs to respect those things. Finally, we look at the nurse's station. This is used for interacting with visitors, maintaining patient records, collaborating and monitoring of patient rooms. There's a unique need for lighting in nurses' stations to contribute to alertness, but respect the needs for the visibility of the corridor and patient rooms. We also want to be leery about spilling into patient rooms. Near field and far field tasks need to strike a firm balance from daytime to the nighttime crew to prevent fatigue. Nursing stations often have separate documentation stations, which can hold the workstation and are individually illuminated. We should observe that while patients need healing and restful sleep during the evening, the lighting needs don't change for the nurses. They still need to maintain alertness and complete their tasks while maintaining their circadian entrainment. This is our body's clock adjusting to the rhythm of visual cues. This can prevent some turnover in this important area. Nobody wants to retrain a nurse. Given these challenges, a 10-to-1 ratio of illuminance is acceptable in the evening times. Sensors can also be deployed to detect activity in smaller areas and illuminate only in that area. Thank you again for your time and attention. Once again, I'd like to hand the presentation off to Jeff Hungarter. Jeff?
Thanks, Dwayne. Thanks, Jim.
No problem.
In there somewhere. So yeah, we're going to now look at certain products that could fit well into this healthcare space, and the two that come to mind are CR Troffer with adjustable color, and then also our new Cadient Dynamic Skylight. So if you're not familiar with that, again, this is a dynamic daylighting solution that basically allows people to create a touchstone to what's actually happening outside. Next slide. So before we get into that, and again, Jim, you did touch on this, much of what we look at specifically in healthcare has to do with circadian rhythm and the melatonin creation. So again, you can see here how this works, right? So you're going in your normal kind of awake and sleep cycles, and reducing melatonin so that you can actually stay on your your circadian rhythm. And that's especially important in healthcare, where nurses, as Jim was saying, you have patients that are trying to kind of keep a normal kind of day-night rhythm while they're in the hospital, but the nurses are actually trying to most likely work a 12-hour cycle, a 7 p.m. to a 7 a.m. cycle. So they're actually looking to stay with higher increased foot candles and probably higher color temperature, because they're actually they're needing to stay awake overnight. And so that is going to we're going to need to deliver a different lighting layout and a different light requirement for them. Next slide. Thanks. So first, if we take a look at the CR Troffer, again, why is this perfect in this space? You can see here, this is a healthcare facility that we had done with the CR Troffer a little while back. The great thing about the CR, as Jim was talking about, is you really want to make sure that you're reducing the glare, and you're really careful about the horizontal foot candles that you're putting onto the various levels of surfaces. And in hospitals, you tend to have a lot of high reflective surfaces because you're obviously looking to have a lot of surfaces or floors that need to be cleaned very often. So again, a lot of that time you're having more of a gloss or a semi-gloss finish. So, really being cognizant of, the type of light that you're putting there. And so with the CR, you're having the LEDs that sit down below. They're being shot up into a mixing chamber, and they're being basically they're color tuned and adjusted, so giving a very soft illuminance, and also no single point of brightness. We also have some various levels, and again, this is important where for different ceiling heights, you can see here, even in this picture, you have some nurses sitting underneath with their computers versus more of a hallway and a lobby. So you might actually end up using different levels of lumen packages in that same setting, just because even though the ceiling height requirement is about the same, the foot candle requirement could actually be very different. And then Jim did talk about it, but the idea of control. So this fixture offers the 0 to 10 volt, but really when you get into healthcare, we're seeing a lot of people go to kind of a more elevated control package. So think about our SmartCasts. If you're not familiar with that, that's our wireless integrated wireless network, or Lutron. So we have a Lutron ecosystem option if you're looking for more of a wired digital control. So again, this allows for those spaces to be flexible and adapted over time. So if you think about different spaces, because space is very limited in a lot of these hospitals, especially in metro areas, sometimes they have to reuse the same space for different activities. And so having fixtures that can be controlled very easily with light levels, and also take into account daylighting. So if a lot of light is coming in through the windows, the lights can automatically dim to offer that visual comfort to the people in that space. That's going to be very critical. And then, we talk about presets, and we'll get into this a little bit with the Cadient discussion, but again, allowing the doctors, nurses, and staffs in those space to have some form of very easy control over the fixtures, depending on what activities are going on or what time of day it is very critical as well. Next slide. So here's just a brief overview of, if you're not familiar, what this platform looks like. So all the different form factors, you can see there all the different various Luma packages in all the different form factors, right? So that just gives you the flexibility to create and design a space. And then if you put controls like SmartCast or Lutron on top of that, you're even adding more flexibility. And then obviously with the color tunable option, you're getting both control and the ability to not only change the intensity of light, but also change the color of light throughout the day. So again, if you're talking about in the morning, where you might want it to be kind of low dim and very warm, and then as you get up towards noon and in the afternoon, it becomes a little bit brighter and the intensity increases, as does the color temperature, getting closer to kind of what a standard day would look like. Next slide. So we want to talk about the Cadient Dynamic Skylight. And here's just, before we get into some of the details about how it can benefit in the healthcare, if you haven't seen it, this is kind of what it is. This is what it looks like. And this gives a great rendition of, how the sun and the sky panels are broken out. So again, this is in a 2x2 form factor. We have a sky, which is that blue on the top. And then we actually have an east and a west sun. So again, these three systems actually can work independently to give you the feeling that a sun is moving across the sky and the feeling that you're actually following the sun as it moves across for a normal day. So very important. There's a sensor there you can see in the top corner that really has to do with the SmartCast network and how the fixtures communicate to each other, but also it works as kind of a compass for us. So it acts as the north, so that when installers are putting this in, they understand that they need to align all these fixtures together so that once they group them as 4 fixtures together, they'll all move together so that that feeling of the sun moving across the sky is a bit more intensified. Next slide. So how does this really fit into this space? And again, this is a therapy room there where you have, again, a nice combination of the Cadients used as more of a focal point right in the middle. Put 4 of those together. You tie those to some CR adjustable SmartCast Troffers, and those fixtures will actually be able to all together move from warm to cool and low intensity to high intensity throughout the day. So again, it's a great kind of ecosystem that the Cadient works within this SmartCast network to give you that connection and the easy ability to do that. So again, giving people, these are most of the spaces on the inside where Jim was talking about, generally the windows are for the patient rooms. So if you've been to a hospital, you can, obviously they're trying to give the patients the most access to daylight. So all those spaces on the inside, nurses' stations, therapy rooms, meditation rooms, all those spaces tend not to, have windows. So again, this is a great way to give people in that space a connection to what's going on outside. And again, one of the things here is the great balance of color quality. So again, both of these fixtures, both the CR and the Cadient, over 90 CRI, great color fidelity. So if you've been following kind of some of these conversations that we've been having around TM30 and color, you'll know that, having great fidelity and saturation, a great balance of that is very important, especially in hospitals to make sure that you have, improved diagnosis and, you can see the actual skin tones a little bit better. And then, I think Jim mentioned it, but the whole idea of not just putting horizontal foot candles down onto, a flat surface, but getting more vertical foot candles to the eye. And because the mechanics of the Cadient have that 5-inch regress, that it is the sun from where the sun goes to the sky, you're actually getting a lot better vertical foot candles. And so you're getting more light to the eye, which is going to actually help with that circadian entrainment. And then really the control part of this, which is, something we haven't really talked about, but this can be controlled with a simple touch screen, which is preloaded with all the presets and the profiles that allow you simply to enjoy all the features of this product. So, it allows both the staff and patient control where you want it to basically change, the light to a time of day that suits them better. So, and then the behind that, right? So you have these presets that you're able to kind of just touch a button on a touch screen and change. But there's always a profile. So a daylighting profile that's always running in the background, right? So again, for a hospital, a nurse's station, you might be putting, a 12-hour profile in that space, and that's going to light up that nurse's station to a high intensity, probably a high color temperature, to keep those nurses on their circadian entrainment for that 12-hour period when they're on that shift. And then it slowly ramps them down as the next shift comes up and slowly ramps up the next shift to get on another 12-hour cycle. So again, having that control, especially with a product like this, is very important. And it just allows for those automated daylighting modes, which again is really important. And here's the, again, just a brief overview of, what the kind of specs are around this. So it's a pretty simple system. You just need the Cadient fixture, which you can see here, and you can order that with the ordering code below. And then the accessories that you need. So the touchscreen, which again, I just took a snapshot and put it here. So again, nothing that someone wouldn't be unfamiliar with. And it's you can learn it in about 15 to 20 minutes about how all the different scenes and the profiles work. And there's a little gateway that's sitting right above that touchscreen. That's basically like an internet router, right? So that's going to be the communicator. It's also going to be the brain that's holding all the data that's communicating between the Cadient fixture and the touchscreen. So that generally will just sit either somewhere in the room or in the plenum, and that acts just as that communicator between the two. And then that just gets powered up by a PoE wall plug. So it's a localized system. You don't need to connect into the healthcare network. And again, that's very important because there's a lot of issues with security. Healthcare networks don't want to have other systems connecting into their network. So the fact that this is a local system, it all works within itself, self-contained, is very important. And then obviously all the flexibility that you get with the dynamic color tunability. And that's all I had.
All right, thanks, both of you guys. We have a couple of questions in here, and I guess I'll start real quick, Jeff, with where you finished. We have a gateway there, and we've had a lot of control sessions, but Cadient can be deployed without IT involvement, correct? So I think that's another important point that we stress around that system. Right,
and that's a key reason when we heard back from people in the healthcare field, specifying engineers, lighting designers, things like that, that especially in healthcare, it's more than ever important that you don't need to include the IT network or the IT team, because that can just put up some specification roadblocks and slow things down. So we took that advice, and that is a big reason that we brought it into the Marquette's wireless network.
I'm going to bundle a couple of questions together here, and it's kind of the sign of the times around COVID-19. And I don't know near term, Jeff, if you can comment on this or not, but one question has to do with the disinfecting lighting market, and if we're interested in that market and getting involved there. And then there was another question about special paints around bacteria. Can you comment on those two questions?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously right now, there's a huge trend towards, people that are looking for certain types of antimicrobial light, germicidal lighting. So, I mean, again, I think it's something that obviously, we're always looking at, new ways to understand how we can offer benefits in the healthcare market. I wouldn't say there's anything right now that we're specifically working on. I think if you listen to recently the LRC, the Lighting Research Center, who we work with in doing some of the research with our Cadient fixture, they held a huge webinar on this topic, because there's a lot of misnomers about what light can do and what light can't do, and how to actually implement it correctly. So again, it's something that I think we're looking at, but we don't really have any hard plans around it. And I think the same with microbial painting, antimicrobial painting, or paint that's used. Again, it's one of those things where we'd like to, if we do come out with something like that, I think we'd like to come out with a family where we don't just have kind of one or two aspects of what the healthcare market needs, that we'd actually have kind of all the things, right? So it's not just having the antimicrobial paint. It's also having a fixture that's wiped down, NSF rated. It's also having a tamper-proof fixture, ligature ratings, things like that. So, I think if we came out with a more focused product line, we would probably want to make sure that we have all the boxes checked when we do that.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Jeff. We know that the Cadient's available only in a 2x2. There's a question about a 4x4 Cadient on the roadmap, or maybe other sizes. Can you maybe talk to that?
Yeah, right now, I mean, I don't think there's no other sizes on our roadmap right now. Obviously, doesn't mean that we're, when we say roadmap, that means something that's actually, in motion, and we're starting to draw up a business case around it. So, we're still taking feedback. We're still pretty early in the launch about, what are the next things that we want to do with Cadient. I can tell you right now, we're looking at potentially other form factors, but not necessarily other, I'll call it sizes, right? So, we're looking at, potentially are there other suspended or linear recess type Cadient products that could make sense, that could be complementary, looking at where lighting design is kind of going today. So, yeah, there's not technically a 4x4 not on our roadmap. Right now it would be just taking 4 of those and putting them, basically putting them together kind of in a 4 cluster. That'd be the way you'd have to do it right now.
Perfect. We have a question, what does CMA control stand for? I know we use that for SmartCast. Is there something we use CMA for? I'm not certain what that abbreviation's for.
No, I think it had to do with like motion and ambient sensing.
Okay.
But we'll actually be starting to move away from that a little bit as we launch some of these new products coming out on our SmartCast WIM network. So we'll be going to a denotation of SC1, which is just kind of SmartCast,
okay.
With a 1% dimming. But yeah, I think it had to do with just kind of motion and ambient sensing is why they chose that.
Okay. We had sessions already on schools and offices, and I know we held Cadient off of those spaces, and we do have some preset profiles in those spaces as well as healthcare and a follow the sun profile. Can you talk a little bit about maybe those profiles? And then, I think also important is the ability or the customization that's available. Can you talk to that as well?
Right. So we send preloaded presets, which are kind of just these scenes, and then we also send 4 different profiles, which are these dynamic daylighting solutions. And those, again, are profiles that are going to, imagine if, something you would click on, it, would just click on automatically at 6 a.m. And it might take, for a follow the sun mode, let's call it, which is one of the profiles that we have preloaded. It would just kind of run you through what a standard day would look like, right? So you can imagine in the morning, it's going to be, warmer, low intensity. And then as you get to noon, it's going to be, high brightness, high intensity, high CCT, so closer to 6,500 Kelvin, as if you were kind of directly under a noon sun, and then kind of go back the other way as you get into the afternoon and then into the evening, kind of a sunset mode, right? And that sun would have moved from the 2 east panels over to the 2 west panels slowly throughout the day. And so that's just one of them. That's probably the most popular one is the follow the sun, just because who doesn't want to have the idea that they're kind of working, but they're actually somehow connected to the outdoors and following the sun across the day. But we also offer an education, an office, and then specifically for this one, the healthcare profile. And the healthcare profile that we've done the research and connected it to is really around those nurses stations. So if you could imagine, what that looks like, you're going to get about 12 hours of high intensity, high CCT color light for those nurses just to keep them awake and on their circadian rhythm. And then you have this huge dip, right? So you'll see the light intensity and the color intensity dip sharply for, let's maybe say 30 minutes or an hour while the nurses kind of exchange information on patients. And the nurse starts to kind of come off of that, and we have to get her prepared to be able to kind of walk out of the building to her car and probably go home and go to sleep. And then we have to kind of get the new nurse that's coming on. We can't just, blind her with light as she comes off the elevator. The idea is that, we would slowly ramp that light back up, and then you give another 12 hours of kind of that high intensity brightness and color temperature. So these are just templates that were kind of research based that are kind of starters. So obviously every healthcare facility is a little bit different, and you're not going to want to, put the healthcare profile in every space, right? Because it's really the one that we have on there is really meant for kind of a 12-hour shift healthcare situation. But they're super easy to, the person that has the access with the passcode is able to easily go in and change on the touchscreen, basically change the time of when they want the profile to start, how long they want it to be at a certain color temperature and a certain intensity, and then where they want the sun to be, left or right. They can actually turn the sky on or off, which again is probably not something you might see in a profile, but there are presets where, like a cloudy day, where you actually you turn the sky off and you just leave the sun on, and it actually appears to be kind of a rainy or a cloudy day. Vice versa, you can leave the I think Jim was talking about making sure patients have just enough light especially at nighttime, but not too much that they're kind of fully awoken. There's something that we're calling kind of a moonlight mode that allows you to leave the sky on in a very low kind of blue hue and turn the sun off. And again, that gives you almost like a nightlight mode where you have enough light, enough foot candles to get from your bed to maybe the bathroom, but it's not overwhelmingly enough that it's going to totally wake the patient up. So again, a lot of versatility there. And again, since it's all preloaded, it makes it super easy. You don't have to go out and go connect, and download a whole bunch of stuff. It's all right there. There's instructions for it. And again, I think after 30 minutes or an hour of, going in there and starting to play around, it's all toggle buttons and things like that. So it's all very intuitive for the person to edit that.
All right, Jeff, we're going a little bit over 30 minutes here, so I've got a few more just to try to clean up, maybe just some quick hitters for you. One has a question kind of similar to around the Acadian about the weather channel and being able to reflect real-time conditions. You want to quickly answer that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so right now, how the weather is really tied back to the touchscreen. So it's looking to the touchscreen for kind of time of day. We are looking at, in the future, how we could. There is the ability to tie this, because it's really all software, to tie this to, where you could type in a zip code and then it would kind of look to almost like a weather app, and it would reflect kind of whatever the weather is doing in that area. So that is something that we're looking at from a software side. It's definitely doable. We just kind of walk before we run. So right now, it just kind of is whatever you set the weather profile to be is what it's going to be. But eventually, yeah, we would see that this could actually interact with what's actually happening outside.
And I think some climates too, you want to get away from cloudy days, right? If you're in Seattle or something, and you've had a long run of cloudy days, the relief might be the office space or the healthcare facility or the school that can give you the sunny day when Mother Nature's not cooperating. Jeff, I think you touched on this one a little bit: hospital grade fixtures, patient bed exam lights, surgical troffers. Is that similar to your first answer on around where we might be going? We're in near term in terms of those solutions as well.
Sorry, say that last part again.
So the question was about, are we moving towards offering hospital grade fixtures, patient bed lights, exam lights, surgical troffers? Are those similar to what we talked about previously when we were asked about like COVID-19 type solutions? Is that part of a larger suite of fixtures down the road, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we don't really have any plans right now of getting into there are certain companies out there that really specialize in a lot of those, especially the patient, the patient lamp and some of those higher end surgical fixtures. There's a lot of requirements around those. Obviously, a lot of cost and price around those as well. So, I think I would see probably, something coming more in the potentially the, antimicrobial wipe down NSF rated, for patient room before I would probably see kind of a suite of specialized healthcare lighting equipment. I think right now we're, probably looking to some of the more specialized healthcare lighting companies to probably do that.
Okay. Last question, and then we'll close up shop. A question about the stylus and color tunability on the roadmap. You want to talk to that real quick?
Yeah, so that is definitely on our roadmap. We understand that having a linear color tunable option is very important, which is the whole reason why obviously we got into the whole stylus market, understanding that we were just missing out on a lot of the new designs without having a linear portfolio. So yeah, I would say I can't give you a timeline right now, but it is in the next batch of stylus additions. We just launched our phase 2, which is with the corners and the wall wash and some of the different optics and the different color some of the different CRI options as well. So yeah, the color tunable is definitely on the roadmap, and it's definitely in the next phase of the stylus launch. I just don't know right now exactly when that might be.
Okay, perfect. I want to thank both Jim and Jeff for your time and sharing your knowledge with us. I just want to thank the audience for joining us, and just quickly looking forward for the rest of the week. On Wednesday, we'll talk about LM80 and TM21, so we'll understand those a little bit more. Friday, we'll look into SmartCast and some of the expanded opportunities around that system. And then next week's design session will feature industrial solutions. So again, thanks everybody for joining us. If you've missed content before, we do have all of the content recorded and available on our YouTube channel. So feel free to check that out if you need to. Again, thanks for your time, everybody, and have a great week.